Many Constant Worlds is a meta disjointed journey through Stephen King's Dark Tower series. I'm Kat, and I have a lot of good shit for you.
I'm Taryn, they, them, and I'm making spaghetti. I don't have any good shit, but I will in a couple hours. It does mean I gotta get up like every 15 minutes to stir it, but
it's good spaghetti.
I'm interested to know Kat's good shit. I want some, apparently.
I feel like I'm going to provide you with some good, like, true crime, I don't know, dopamine?
That'll be nice. I need some. I need some today. I made the mistake of, like, reading news information right before we started recording. My brain actually hurts. Ugh.
So, for this episode, we read through Part 2 of Misery, which is also titled Misery.
I'm in misery.
Though, I'm not gonna lie, maybe it should just be fucking called Misogyny, because Paul Sheldon is such a misogynistic ass. Like, Annie is definitely bad. I'm not trying to pretend like Paul deserved any of this shit, but he has, like, no respect for women.
Okay, but hashtag not all women. Like,
Not all. There's this point where he's, like, thinking about something, and we'll get to it, but he has a thing called his "Can I help you, lady" face. And I just fucking hate this man. It was so infuriating to read.
is it that he hates women, or is it that he has been victimized by Karens?
I don't know. Like,
And
there's reason, like...
I'm allowed to say that because my name is Taryn. So I have a Karen pass. I just wanted to point that out.
I think that it comes from his mom, because, like, there's this story of his mom taking him to the zoo, and he gets really upset because he sees a bird in captivity, and it bothers him that this bird is so far away from Africa, which is also where some of the, like, the idol stuff comes in.
What about the other animals?
Yeah. Either way, he gets really upset and he starts crying. And he won't stop crying, and his mom, like, calls him a sissy, and we get back to, like, toxic masculinity. So I do think it comes from the fact that as a child, he was told to behave a certain way by his own mother. But it just, oh my god, it's so fucking infuriating, some of the shit that he says and thinks about women.
Do you think Stephen King doesn't feel like he's allowed to cry? Or
yes.
At least wasn't allowed to cry?
Yes, I'm thinking, like, he was very much told that crying is not for boys.
That's
after
fair.
The Eyes of the Dragon, after the story about the bird.
If you live in Maine, is that a Maine thing, or is it just a everywhere thing? I grew up, as I'm making spaghetti right now, I grew up in an Italian family, and we cry. We're crying people. The men cry. The women actually fucking don't cry as much, I feel like, but that was never it kind of, like, I don't know. It's complicated. I just don't, I know it's an everywhere thing, but is it more in Maine? Understand. Don't cry into your lobster. Don't cry over spilt lobster.
I think that's how you were gonna finish that. Okay. So, I will give the slight amendment that technically I said we read, but I am going to reiterate and continue to reiterate that we support taking care of yourself and your own mental health, and there are just some triggers in this book that were not for Taryn, and I am going to do my best to convey all of the info, but you know what? I feel like if I've forgotten something, you're not missing anything.
That's fair. I mean, I assumed when you said we, you just meant the other readers who read it with you,
yeah,
and not the sissies who didn't do it with me.
No, we're not promoting that sissy bullshit.
I mean, I was just gonna say, like, we're cool.
Sissy Spacek is badass and Carrie.
It's the only time I'm cis anything.
Part 1 started with a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. according to how YouTube told me to pronounce his name.
I hate it.
Part 2 begins with a quote that I forgot to look up how to pronounce this person's name. You're good at things like this. Montaigne.
Oh, jeez. I can't see that in my head. You're going to have to repeat that.
Montaigne.
Oh, Montaigne, maybe?
Montaigne, okay.
Montaigne or... I mean, it might be Montaigne or Montaigne, but I have a feeling it's probably Montaigne or...
Okay. We'll look it up and we'll correct later if needed. But yeah, I'm good. Montaigne sounds like reasonable. I'm just like looking at this like I forgot to look this one up. So
in so many languages, we just like to throw G's. Like G's just get thrown around for like the fun of it. Like, because why not? I guess it makes it fancier. I don't know, but Montaigne, maybe.
Okay, so we start with the quote: "Writing does not cause misery; it is born of misery," which that suits.
How the fuck do they know? That's bullshit. Ask any high schooler in an English class, and they will prove that shit wrong real fast. Ask any college kid in an 8 a.m. English class. 8 a.m. lit, 8 a.m. or who has like a 20-page paper. Ask anybody writing a dissertation. Born of misery. Fuck, that doesn't cause misery. It's the most... that can't be a full quote. Like, there's more to...
Possibly. That's all that I got of it.
Stilted bullshit. I had to find out who this person is.
The section starts with the chapter from the new Misery book that Paul is currently working on writing for Annie. All the favorites are there. Ian, Jeffrey, Joffrey, whatever. And, of course, Misery. And she is alive and well. It is written that the doctor made it just in the nick of time to save her. Oh, and the nurse caring for Misery's child, her name is Annie. Like, straight up, it's just named after Annie. I think it's, even the same. It's Annie Wilkes is the nurse's name. Paul has given this chapter to Annie to read, but she is not the biggest fan. She does say that she loves it and was really flattered by the use of her name, but ultimately what he has written is a cheat because he made it very explicitly clear in Misery's Child that the doctor did not make it in time, so it's not going to work now. There were reasons that the doctor didn't make it, and it's not feasible for him to have made it.
So she's pointing out a plot hole is what you're telling me.
Uh-huh. And what writer doesn't just love it when a fan points out a glaring plot hole? This is where we actually get the "Can I help you, lady" face reference, because he's talking about how Annie has now gone from constant reader to merciless editor. Eventually, he gets to a further conclusion, and what he says is that his "Can I help you, lady" face is what he uses with editors who are like women who take their car into the shop and just want things blindly fixed. And I fucking hate this part.
What? Blindly fixed? So what? Just don't know what they're talking about? Don't know.
Let me find this section and it just does not land well with me. I could just be being sensitive. I don't know. He thought of this as his "Can I help you, lady" expression. That was because most editors were like women who drive into service stations and tell the mechanic to fix whatever it is that's making that knocking sound under the hood or going wonk wonk inside the dashboard, and please have it done an hour ago.
Okay, but that does kind of sound like Karen-ish.
And that's fine. It's just...
what he's trying to describe.
Yeah, my issue here is that I get maybe, don't have it done an hour ago, but when I take my car to the mechanic, I do expect you to find out what the sound is and please fix it.
No, for sure. So I will give a couple passes because cars were different in the 80s, and maybe he's trying to get across that women didn't women didn't know anything about cars, but that should have taken auto shop, and you should know something about your car, and you should, I don't know. It's bad. Like, it's bad. The only part of that really I can get on board with is the whole, like, have it done an hour ago.
Yeah, that's fair and reasonable there.
But that's, like, it's worse. Like, if you walk in, like, imagine being the asshole that walks in and goes, well, I already know what's wrong. So, like,
yeah,
you know, and then, oh my God. It's like, okay, well, then why didn't you fucking fix it?
Yeah.
Like, so, but I don't think he's supposed to be likable.
I don't think he is. I think it's a lot like with the Eyes of the Dragon, where even Peter had his flaws. He was overall meant to be, like, very likable in a lot of ways, but he also fell short. He was kind of dumb.
But here's my question. Like, this whole book is told from this guy's perspective, right?
I would say more from his perspective. It's still third person, but we get, like, his thoughts and things. So what is that?
From his perspective, but in the third person, and only what that... I'm sorry, his name's Bill, right?
His name's Paul.
Paul. Why did I think his name was Bill? Paul.
Because we didn't get to watch it the other night when we wanted to watch it. And the main character there is Bill.
And if the narrator only knows what Paul knows... Even if they know his thoughts, that I think is third person limited. And the reason I was asking is because I wonder if it's an unreliable narrator then. Because if he's talking about, like, now she's become the editor and she's become this, that, and the other, it's only from his perspective.
Yeah.
And it's only what he knows and what he thinks and what he's viewing Annie as, right? I'm curious then, because even if it's third person, it still sounds like it's all Paul's viewpoint.
Yeah. I don't think we really get Annie's thoughts at any point.
Yeah. And if it never switches to anybody else but Paul, because if it ever switches away to, like, Tom down at the service station who wondered whatever happened to that guy or something, if it's sticking only with Paul all the time, that gives the chance for that, like, unreliable narration where, like, maybe Annie never tied him to the bed and never actually hobbled him, but, you know, he feels like he's been, you know, he feels like his fans have broke his legs and have hobbled him because he feels like he's tied to these expectations of his characters, and he feels like he's stuck doing these things, and he feels like he's trapped by his addiction to these, you know, pain meds and to these other medications and stuff. And this is the nurse who, you know, or this is his drug dealer or something. Mm-hmm. But also this, like, embodiment of his fans. I don't know. That just occurred to me because of the way that she's, like, changing.
An interesting point.
Maybe I should have waited until later to bring it up. It just popped into my head.
So he does eventually kind of come to terms with the fact that Annie is not merciless editor, and he has to admit that constant reader does not mean constant sap. And she's right. She just pointed out a plot hole to him.
Yeah.
So she does kind of explain a little bit about herself, and we do finally learn a little about Annie Wilkes. She was raised in Bakersfield. As people who lived a good portion of our lives in Northern California, we know Bakersfield.
Well, at least I know. I don't know what you know of Bakersfield. I know the part of Bakersfield that's like a gas station and like 3 fast food joints just before you start going over the Grapevine to go into LA. I've never spent like a significant amount of time in Bakersfield. But
Amtrak. I know the Amtrak station, and I've been stuck there waiting for like the next train to like leave. Yeah. It's hot.
Yeah.
It's always hot. It's never not hot in Bakersfield.
Like no matter what time of year I've ever been in Bakersfield, it's just sunbaked.
Yeah.
And nothing. No matter where you look around you while you're eating your like Carl's Jr. or whatever, just before you start going over.
Which is also always hot.
See, but I associate Bakersfield with Disneyland because...
I associate it with Comic-Con because that's the Amtrak stop.
Yeah. Shout out to Bakersfield.
Heck yeah. We also find out that she had an older brother, and that older brother used to take her to the movies, and that older brother's name was Paul. Yeah. That,
I feel like this is building more into my unreliable narration.
Yeah, no, I think it does.
Like,
and that's why, like, solid and interesting things are coming. So she talks about how her brother would take her to the movies, and she explains how she used to always love watching the little chapter plays before the movie started. And her favorite was Rocket Man. And what she liked was that his escapes were always, as she puts it, fair and realistic. It's still fantastical, but as far as she was registering it, the stuff that got him out of the, like, hairy situation he was in the week before, it at least made sense to her brain how it worked. You know, he happened to find a parachute just in the nick of time because it's in a place a parachute would be found. And, you know, Paul, being the misogynistic piece of shit he is, his response was to treat Annie like an idiot and describe, I mansplain. He was fucking man-filling in, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, the word cliffhanger for her. Which did tick her off. She's like, I know what a fucking cliffhanger is. I couldn't blame her. He's an asshole.
I'm rooting for Annie more and more as we go on.
Yeah, no. When I read that portion, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Like, Annie, you deserve to kidnap a better class of kidnappee at this point.
Yeah.
Like, move on. Let this guy go. He'll probably be too, like, embarrassed that he got kidnapped by a woman to call the police.
Yeah. Yep.
Let him go and get you, like, I don't know, just somebody better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody who won't try to explain to you what kidnapping means.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you're going to want to tie like a double knot with those ropes.
He does kind of like go on because he disagrees necessarily with the fair and realistic that Annie is pointing out. He does to an extent, but
of course he does.
Yeah. No. He comes to the point, I'm just going to read this straight from the book, where he thinks to himself, fair and realistic might be synonyms in the best of all possible worlds, but if so, this was not that world. Yeah, I don't like Paul. I do appreciate that he does eventually come around and admit that Annie is right, because the way that he had written the book was just not good.
Could you imagine having this dude in your life and not having put him in a wheelchair and tying him up and shit? Like, imagine how he'd treat any, like, woman or AFAB person that didn't have complete control over him this way.
Oh yeah, no, it's true, because, like, there's also, like, a bit in here where he's breaking out some English teacher crap, which I'm assuming is because Stephen King was an English teacher. When she is talking about the fair and realistic, what he ends up, like, thinking is, like, any teacher, like, English teacher would disagree with you. What you're talking about is a deus ex. Keep reasoning why your writing was better, Paul. Good job. Best of luck to you.
I mean, what she's talking about is an escape room.
He goes back to the drawing board because he does have to admit that, you know, what he wrote was crap. He knew it. He didn't like hearing it. And I will say, like, those are probably the moments I do like, is that he does eventually have to go, yeah, no, I found it in there and I didn't really try. And that he doesn't like it either, but he has, like, such contempt for misery readers that he's just, I don't think that if you hate the people who read your writing that much, you should continue to get to write those kind of books.
No, and I think that's a really good point. I think that if you have that much, the contempt that he has for his readers is a reflection of the contempt that he has for himself.
Yeah.
He obviously doesn't believe that what he's writing is any good.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe that what he's writing is, like, he has no actual confidence, it sounds like, in himself, or confidence in what he's, like, he doesn't like what he's writing. He doesn't like himself at all. And that's because he doesn't know his readers. He doesn't know, like, this sounds like the first time he's getting to know any of them. And so it's just this reflection back. But if he really were to sit and think about that and like analyze it, he'd have to do any self-analyzation, which I think would be dangerous for him because it would start to like break down any of his like any of the constructs it sounds like he's made for himself, because he sounds like somebody who feels very superior.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to fill in the word cliffhanger.
I think it's interesting, the English teacher portion, because it's a position of authority over people. And I think, like, I have to wonder if that's also part of it. Like, he constantly feels, like, superior and authoritative. Again, I think the fact that Stephen King put in it that he consulted with mental health professionals.
Yeah.
I don't think it was only for Annie.
No, I don't think so either.
And so I really wonder, like, how much is, like, almost like a narcissism on his, like, on Paul's part.
Mm-hmm.
That he's like, I am so much better than all of you, and all of you take this drivel that I throw at you and eat it up because you're fucking morons.
He's Brian Griffin.
So he said,
"Wish it wanted to it." Oh, that's still one of my favorite episodes too. Paul goes back to the drawing board. He is uncertain about exactly how he's going to bring back Misery. He is still kind of like, I'm not sure how to also work with this no-in typewriter. And the typewriter develops a voice, and I found the voice that he picked really interesting, and I think you will too. The voice of a teenage gunslinger in a Hollywood Western, a kid intent on making a fast reputation here in Deadwood. That is the voice he is assigned to this typewriter in his head.
That is interesting.
Right?
That's really interesting. What kind of stuff is the typewriter saying, though?
It's basically just saying you're a hack, you can't do this, you don't know what you're doing, you suck. Let's see, the first line that it says here is like, I thought you were supposed to be good, the typewriter said. His mind had invested it with a sneering and yet callow voice. And that's when I read to you, like, in the gunslinger. The typewriter continues by saying, you're not so good. Hell, you can't even please one crazy, overweight ex-nurse. Maybe you broke your writing bone in that crash, too. Only that bone isn't healing. Yeah, the typewriter is just very critical of him.
His crash comes later, but if you put that aside, it's obvious that he's writing himself a little bit.
I really hope he's not this misogynistic, but yes.
I hope he's not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I really only know Twitter using Stephen King.
Yeah. I mean, people can grow. People can get better. And maybe he wasn't misogynistic. Maybe he was nihilistic. And he just hated everybody. I could see it.
Fair enough.
I will say that the criticism, like the self-criticism, and I do, that's what I'm getting at. Yeah. That feels like obviously self-criticism.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is always the other side of that grandiose behavior of you're all beneath me and you're eating this drivel up. He obviously doesn't, again, like he doesn't actually believe in himself, I think, at all. He doesn't buy what he's selling. He puts that on the readers. Now he's putting that on the typewriter and on a gunslinger that he's making up. Mm-hmm. Now a teenage gunslinger also doesn't believe in him, which is interesting. That's a lot. My mind has been blown just a little bit.
Well, despite the typewriter's lack of faith in him, Paul does kind of figure out a way to work this whole Misery return business. She is essentially getting buried after a bee sting incident similar to another woman, and they're somehow related, and so Paul's going to dive into that. I'm not going to lie, I was not super into the Misery chapters, like the ones that are supposed to be from the book. I assume and can see from reading them that there's obviously some connections to like what he's experiencing, but it just, I struggled to read them, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about bee stings. I can't
Yeah.
blame
Well, the
you.
bee sting was technically Annie's idea. He just took it and he ran with it because at first he didn't think that was going to work. So I will say, like, it is. They're not there for no reason. I'm not trying to pretend like they're not like useful. I just struggle to pay attention to them. The gist out of it is that Misery is the main character. She is very much kind of your Mary Sue. Ian is her husband. Jeffrey or Joffrey is Ian's best friend and Misery's lover and the father of the baby. And it's set in Victorian England. It's very much like it's a romance novel, and like I have zero shame for anybody who enjoys those. I'm not one of them. That's why I think I struggle to like, because it's a well written, like it's a romance novel in there. I struggle with reading those kind of books in the first place. So
Isn't a bee sting like a major part of the Netflix one, Bridgerton?
I didn't watch Bridgerton. I don't know.
I watched the first season. It doesn't matter. Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is. Like, the dad dies from a bee sting.
Okay.
Right at the beginning or something. I don't know. I haven't read the books, but I watched the first season when we had COVID.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Yeah, so the bee sting is a suggestion from Annie, and you know what's interesting is she got very she got fan nervous making this suggestion, and she makes it very clear to him, I don't want to dictate the story, but hey, what if it was a bee sting? And at first he was like, no, that's dumb. It's not going to be a bee sting. He didn't say that to her. He thought it. He thought like, no, that's silly. But then the more he thought about it, he's like, nah, I got an idea, and he fucking ran with it. So she does not honestly seem like she's forcing him to make the story any particular way. She wants him to write it as a legitimate Misery novel. She is not trying to fanfic this. She just wants to make him make it legit. We do get someone finally visits Annie's little farm. I didn't really talk about it much like the first episode, but yeah, Annie lives on a farm. She's got a pig named Misery, named after Misery.
I mean, that's one way to do an ode.
So this man who is identified as Mr. Rancho Grande, I believe because of the car he is driving, and this is, Paul's, assigned name to him. He's here to see Annie. And Annie threatens Paul, you better stay quiet. She ends up gagging him. I'm not going to go into too many details about the gag, but it reeked, and he had to try and stay okay through that. So she goes down, she meets the dude. When she comes back, what Paul finds out is that he was a tax collector. And she is in arrears on her property taxes. She is very specifically $506.17 behind. This number gets repeated so fucking much, that's why I'm saying it here.
It feels like a code that needs to get put in someplace.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't really understand why we are repeating the amount so much. And she's real hung up on that 17 cents too, because Paul mentions something about the amount. She says, don't forget the 17 cents. I'm like, okay. Paul gets struck by the idea of trying to, keep the peace where he can. Additionally, if Annie leaves, he will get a little time to get out of the room if possible, because he's also noticed from his previous excursion out of the room that he has left marks on the wall. And to this point, she has not said anything, so he thinks she has not seen them, and he has a chance to clean them up. He tells Annie, I had $400 cash in my wallet. I will help you pay it if you have the other $106.17. And she's just like, oh, I don't, why would you do that? And he's like, well, you've taken good care of me. Just tries to sweet talk her into it, which she does finally agree. She's like, oh, thank you, blah, blah, blah. It's interesting because even he mentions this. She got really weird about getting into his wallet. She felt uncomfortable going into his wallet to pull out the money. She made him do it. And this is, again, a woman who's, already done horrible things to this guy. Not as horrible as things will eventually get, I'm sure, but...
I mean, women know their purses. She wouldn't want it done to her.
That's true.
But also, I think it's yet another sign that maybe everything is not as it seems. mental health is also strange.
It is.
I don't know. That is an interesting...
Well, and she didn't take the money from him already. She's had him for a while.
Yeah.
And she didn't help herself to his wallet.
You know, though, I do have to say, like, from a, like, if you look at, like, crimes, right? Like, I'm going to get true crimey here. A lot of times, criminal, especially, like, the ones who are, I don't want to say, like, mentally unwell. That's not... It is what I mean, but what I mean is more like when they can kind of get off like insanity defense, I guess. Ones who really, criminals, people who do bad things but legitimately can't understand that what they're doing is not okay, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time, like, there's like a code, not a code, they'll have like an inner moral code, but they'll also have like... because they don't really understand that what they're doing isn't okay. Like, Annie has him there to fix these books. She thinks she's taking care of him to a degree, but the bad things she's doing, it very much sounds like it's this line of, why did you make me do that?
Yes.
Like, it's not because she wants to hurt him. It's not because... It's like reprimanding a child. So, of course, she wouldn't want to go into his wallet or steal his money because those things, like, those aren't punishments. It's not because he's doing something bad. So, to her, like, I think it probably makes perfect sense. Whereas to you and I, we're sitting here going, like, well, you've already, like, tortured. Like, why would this be the line?
Yeah.
Why is this not okay? And I think that, like, in the real world as well, people, when you look at people who've done really terrible things, they'll have weird lines that they won't cross and weird shit that they won't do because in their mind, the things that they're doing are either okay or, like, they're doing it for a reason. But, like, those things, you know, well, I wouldn't steal because that's not okay. Or it's just not part of their shit, you know?
Yeah. So Annie does take the money. She goes to pay the bill. He does try and clean up, like, the marks on the wall. He also ends up finding himself really motivated to write and itching to get back to it. So he does. Things are, for the most part, good between the two of them, but Annie ends up dropping into a depression. And Paul is very desperate to write. He ends up revealing that he can get into the wheelchair on his own because he really wants to write. And she is so depressed. She's really not doing anything. But she hears him like get into the chair, comes running up and sees it, tells him you can fill in your own ends because he'd asked her to start filling in the ends for him. And she tells him you can start filling them in then. She does end up coming back a bit later with a rat in a trap in her hands. The rat is still technically alive, but with a broken back. And
oh, no.
Yeah, she's in a very bad place at this point. She starts talking about the rats in the cellar and how, like, the cellar will also flood and they'll still, like, go down there. And it's depression talk. There's no other way to describe it other than that of just, like, seeing the struggle. But the cellar being flooded also it's funny that she talked about Bill. And we wanted to watch it. It made me think a little bit of the flooded basement scene in it with Pennywise in the water.
Yeah, something about the rat that you mentioned made me think of that too. Like,
okay.
But I can't put my finger on it.
I can't either, but it's just, I mean, that's why we're doing this. We're trying to figure out what does it
right
mean?
There. Yeah. Stephen King's just laughing somewhere.
So she does end up killing the rat with her hands. And telling Paul that she can do the same for both of them. He has to know at this point he's not leaving this house alive. Like, there's no way, even when he finishes the book. But much like Peter in the Eyes of the Dragon, he makes the conscious decision he wants to live. Remember Peter's letter to the judge of just like, I have decided to live. And Paul presents it very much as like, I have decided to live. And he starts referencing Scheherazade from Arabian Nights. And his plan is basically to invoke his inner Scheherazade and tell the story to keep himself alive.
Yeah, that feels very much like Stephen King has dealt with depression.
Yes.
Because I can say, like, for me, like, I've absolutely struggled with suicidal ideation and stuff.
Yeah.
And I will say trigger warning from this point for anybody listening.
To bypass this content, please skip to 38 minutes and 20 seconds. Take care of yourselves.
I've dealt with that, and you have to, at some point, like, you have to just make a decision that, no, I am going to live. And from there, like you have to make a conscious decision. Like, this is how this is going to go. And from that point, things start to become a lot easier, I think.
Mm-hmm.
At least it did for me. But you do have to, like, decide that, make it a conscious decision. And I think for, like, quote unquote normal people, that's just how life is. And you're just alive and you're just functioning.
Yeah.
And obviously, so, like, Peter in Eyes of the Dragon, he's in a situation where, like, you know, it's more life or death, but at the same time, he's safe in a prison cell, too. They even make a comment about him dashing his brains out on the cobblestones beneath him because they don't care if he does.
Yeah.
He has to decide, I'm going to keep living. Paul, in this situation, Annie even is in a depressive episode and saying, like, murder-suicide, essentially.
Yeah.
And he's deciding, no, I want to live. But all signs are pointing, it sounds like, that he's also got some deep mental health issues.
I would absolutely agree.
And he's making a conscious decision. I am going to live, and I'm going to live a life. And I think, from what I know with Eyes of the Dragon, or not Eyes of the Dragon, but Dark Tower moving forward, that's going to continue to be a theme. Eddie Dean is going to be really interesting, I think, with that. Just spoiler, he's a heroin addict who becomes part of Roland's quartet, but just by the nature of being a heroin addict, he has to make a pretty conscious decision to live and keep going. You know, anybody who is around Roland kind of has to decide to keep going. Roland has to decide to keep going, but you have to really make that decision. Like, no, I'm going to live. And then you do whatever it takes to keep living. So that is interesting. I'm interested to see, like, how many more times we see that. Like, I'm interested for The Shining too, because I can't remember. Jack is the dad?
Jack is the dad, yeah.
I think Jack doesn't decide that, clearly.
No.
But Danny seems like he does, even though they both have alcohol issues, or at least, you know, we'll talk about Dr. Sleep when Dr. Sleep happens. Yeah, I think that's very much a theme.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Anyways, trigger warning over.
You are safe.
Paul does decline because he has decided, no, he wants to live. And he insists to her that he would really like to see how the book ends as well. And she agrees that she'd also like to see that. So she tells Paul that she is going to go to what she calls her laughing place. And this is where she goes when she is in a dark place so that she can move out of it before she does something really bad. She does not know how long she is going to be gone for, and reveals that this is actually where she had been on her way home from when she found him. She goes. Paul, of course, uses this opportunity to get out of his room. She's going to be gone for at least a little bit. And he just sees that it, like, ravages of Annie's depression. There are signs of just, like, lots of consumed sweets, just empty bowls all over the place, empty, like, Pepsi bottles, and, like, a gravy boat. And gravy?
You sound so confused, but you've seen my room in the same exact state. I don't know why you sound like you don't know what you would be looking at.
I think I do. I don't know. I don't feel like gravy would be my go-to. It feels like it would be too much work, but I think that's it. I hate making gravy.
Yeah, but if you're out of everything else,
That's true.
and if the only dish plus, like, if that's the only dish you have, I was gonna say maybe there wasn't gravy in it, but you said there was gravy
Yeah,
in
like
the gravy
there's
note.
signs that she was legitimately eating gravy. It sounds
Yeah.
like. So,
You know what? I'll tell you right now, gravy is delicious.
no, it is absolutely. I'm just too lazy to make it. It's too much work.
I don't understand how it's not. Gravy's actually pretty easy.
That's why you make the gravy in the house.
That is true.
We finally get to it. We get to stanza 18 of part 2. And it is the background chapter.
Oh.
Yes. Paul ends up finding Annie's scrapbook of murder.
I'm picturing the burn book from Mean Girls, but the font, like the same font on the cover, but it just says like literally scrapbook of murder on the front.
So it's all told largely through newspaper clippings. So it starts with a story about a young girl and a fire, which was Annie's neighbors that were in the fire. 3 of the children of one family, and the oldest one was also named Paul, by the way.
Okay, so is she just finding Paul's? Was Paul not really her older brother?
I don't know. It seems really, it doesn't seem like it's a throwaway. That obviously our writer is Paul Sheldon, her older brother was Paul, and the oldest son of this family was Paul.
Well, and I'm also interested now to get to Firestarter as well, because did she set that fire or did it just traumatize her? And now she's putting him in the older brother role in her head, but it was just a friend who lived next door. I don't know. I don't know anything about Firestarter except for they made a movie with Zac Efron and he was playing a dad of a child and I'm like, fuck, he's like a year older than us. We're so old now. Sorry.
So the father of the family and then some bachelor neighbor, they all died in this fire. What?
Bachelor neighbor?
Yeah, there's some other dude who ended up like getting killed. The way that it comes off later is like Annie did not like the children. They annoyed her. So she started the fire to kill them. And then everybody else just kind of got caught up in it. The killing continues and it includes Annie's father, who fell down the stairs after tripping on a pile of clothes. Then, she like repeats herself because that one worked really well. Only this time she kills her college roommate by putting a dead cat on the stairs. The cat's name, by the way, is Peter Gunn with 2 N's.
That feels also familiar to me.
It does, right? I don't quite know what we're doing here.
James Gunn.
Maybe, and Sean Gunn.
Yeah.
So yeah, the roommate also dies tripping over on the stairs, but this time over their cat. So from here, Annie ends up settling into her groove as a nurse. Basically, her process is she gets hired as a nurse, and she starts killing the elderly. The causes usually being long illness or short illness. Succumb to long illness it seems like her primary like way that it's getting ignored. Because these are not acknowledged as straight up murders because it's elderly people. So they're just going, oh, well, they're old.
I'm not gonna lie, like, if you are a serial killer, or if you have serial killer tendencies, that does feel like the smartest way to get your, like, feelings out is to, like, work for a hospice. I'm not suggesting you do that. It's still murder. If you work for a hospice and then wait until the night somebody is, like, dying, and then go like, okay, I killed you, like, 2 seconds before you go, and then I got to do it. I feel like it's a net, like, equal, I guess. Like, nobody loses, nobody wins. I don't know. I'm just telling you right now, I'm not a nurse. I'm not doing this. This is not, I don't even know how you do that, but I don't know. I know people on hospice get like a shit ton of like drugs, so you can give them like extra, I guess. And then like you get to be like, I won. I was the killer. But I think part of the thrill is that like you're hurting somebody, so I don't think it would be probably good enough. But if you just want to win and be killing a person, that's probably a way you wouldn't get caught and you wouldn't actually be hurting anybody. Because usually they know, like, when somebody's gonna die, they know within, a couple hours of it happening because they're, like, on death's door. So you can, like, right then. You can be like, well, you've only got a couple hours left anyways. You probably won't care. You're in pain anyways. Like, but I think there's been a couple of like angels of death who've done that.
I think so too. And honestly, even you talking about that, it makes you think of Dr. Sleep. He wasn't killing them. He was comforting them in the like final moments, but he did go to work and he used his shine to help ease people as they were sending off. But yeah.
I feel like that's when you find someone that is a serial killer, and then you use your shine or whatever to then find people who are about to die, and you just pair the two up. You go like, here, like...
It's an unstoppable force.
Yeah, meeting a immovable object or whatever. And then you just keep doing it. How come Ewan McGregor could do that accent, but he could not pull off French to save his life?
I don't know. Maybe it's harder.
It probably is.
Like, especially since with, like, Scottish.
Scotland and France are just friends. They've historically always been friends.
I just feel like your mouth would struggle with some of the shapes you gotta make from one to the other. I don't know.
Because your mouth is chronically closed in two different ways?
Yes. Anywho, so the articles keep kind of going, and while he's like looking at them, he ends up remembering a dream he'd actually had about Annie. And while I talked in our first episode about Misery, how Annie made me think a lot of Carrie, this particular dream really started to make me think of Flag. I'm going to just read to you the section of it that came back to him. He saw Annie Wilkes in a long apron dress, her hair covered with a mob cap, and Annie who looked like a nurse in London's Bedlam Hospital. She held a basket over one arm. She dipped into it, brought out sand, and flung it into the upturned faces she passed. This was not the soothing sand of sleep, but poisoned sand. It was killing them. When it struck them, their faces went white, and the lines on the machines monitoring their precious lives went flat.
That is interesting. Yeah.
It feels like we're at that stage of like, it's almost making sense, but it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But it's something. It's not nothing. It has to be something. Why? Obviously, there's like Sandman, and because he's mentioning like it's not putting them to sleep. But Flag used dragon sand. And guess who ends up getting called the Dragon Lady? It's not a coincidence. It doesn't feel like it could be a coincidence.
No.
Like, she's not getting called Dragon Lady yet. But what we're going to get to as we get through these articles is that the community, once she's finally getting caught on anything, they call her the Dragon Lady.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The killing does end up stopping for a little bit when Annie gets married to a man who Paul describes as strikingly similar to her father. The man's name is Ralph. It was kind of funny because Paul kept being wrong, but at this point I'm just kind of like irritated with Paul. I'm like, you don't deserve this, but you're an asshat. Because he kept assuming he was going to come across the article about Ralph's untimely demise. And I don't believe there ever was any point where he finds it. Instead, he gets like a house being purchased, the one that they're in, and eventually a divorce granted page. And
because even Annie Wilkes knows if you want out of a marriage, just get a divorce.
I do believe Ralph is the one who wanted the divorce.
I'm just saying, even Annie Wilkes knows.
Yeah. So it also sounds like while they were married is when I think he filed for divorce on the grounds of like mental abuse and things like emotional abuse. So, and not a shocker. She's obviously uncared for. She needs some mental health help. Once the divorce is done, we get back to killing. A new arrivals page for hospitals. And then, she does her thing, long illness, short illness.
It is interesting that she wasn't killing while she was married, though.
It is interesting. Like, it just stops.
Yeah.
She's, at least as far as we know, I guess, she wasn't getting any articles. And since she's the one who's put this scrapbook together, she was not taking her trophies. Or would that be considered a trophy?
I think so.
Okay.
A trophy usually is like a personal, it's like an item that just reminds you. like the killing, essentially, or of the crime. I don't want to say killing because there's cases where it's not, like, it's other crimes that you're remembering. I don't know. I don't know if articles would. I think because the way that she puts them together in a scrapbook, it seems like it. But I think, like, personal items are usually more, or like body parts.
By the end of 1981, based on the articles of murder throughout the scrapbook, she would have had more than 30 murders done. She was doing okay there until she fucked up, because she fucked up. There was a new announcement that she was going to be the head of the maternity ward.
Ooh.
And while people don't really question too often when elder deaths occur, an unnatural amount of newborns deaths catch attention.
Just ask Lucy Letby in the UK, who I'm going to say right now, on record, I don't think she was just bad at her job. Too many deaths, that fucking woman was killing babies, but allegedly.
So this is when Annie is dubbed the Dragon Lady, because it does get noticed. Annie does end up getting pulled in. There is a trial. One of the biggest pieces of evidence against her is that the prosecution has an image from one of the newborns that died. Like, you can clearly see the indent of this amethyst ring that Annie wears on her right hand, on her fourth finger.
Like, an indent? How, though?
Let me see if I can find exactly how the amethyst ring was indented.
Yeah, because it doesn't, like, if it's just the inside of it, like, that's just a ring.
The district attorney had a hand mark on girl Christopher's face and throat, which corresponded to the size of Annie's hand, complete with the mark of the amethyst ring she wore on the fourth finger of her right hand. The DA also had a pattern of observed entries and exits to the nursery, which roughly corresponded to the infant deaths.
So those things together, it sounds different. But I don't know. In a book, I guess it makes sense, but in real life, that must be a pretty...
For what it's worth, she still doesn't get convicted from this. Because the jury does not feel like her guilt was proven without reasonable doubt.
In the 80s, especially, so what I'm going to relate this to is Ted Bundy, right?
Okay.
That, I think, was like the late 70s, I want to say. Because I think he was executed in like 89. But Ted Bundy, some of the evidence that was used to convict him was evidence like this.
Okay.
So one of the things was a bite mark that he left on one of his victims. I'm going to tell you right now, bite mark analysis is bullshit, and it was especially bullshit back then. You can use dental records to identify like a body because the teeth are in the head, but trying to identify bite mark analysis on like a person, like imagine if I bit you, like it just wouldn't, you can't match teeth like that way.
Yeah.
Even now today in 2023, it's not, you can't, it's just, Ted Bundy did it, don't get me wrong. It's just the way that that kind of evidence is really hard to actually like use or like a hand mark that way. My hand and my sister's hand are really similarly sized.
Yeah.
And a ring on the fourth finger, so like if you like backhand somebody with a ring, unless it's like a halo ring or whatever, where the thing goes all the way around, where there's like a design or stones that go all the way around that you could match on like the palm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be super loose evidence.
Yeah.
And like the entries and exits, well, if she's a nurse, she should be going in and out of that room.
Yeah.
If they don't have it on camera, that would be super loose evidence. I'm not shocked that that wouldn't convict somebody, even in a book.
Yeah.
I feel like Stephen King is trying to say, look at all this evidence, and she still wasn't convicted.
Yeah.
But it is not unbelievable to me because it's not strong evidence. This was also like before DNA
Yeah.
was a thing. One of the first big DNA trials is the O.J. Simpson trial in the 90s. So it was just a lot harder to convict people of shit like this, of anything. You had... anyways, I could go on and on. This isn't a true crime podcast. Eventually, it will be my true crime podcast, but not this one. You'll have to join me someplace else for that. But.
So I am going to sidestep briefly into the realm of stones and crystals. Because the fact that we're pointing out that it's an amethyst ring. So amethysts have the ability to connect you to the divine. They're also supposed to have a calming effect and help control negative and evil thoughts. It is believed, old school, I think it's like the Greeks and the Romans used to actually believe that it helped prevent intoxication. Amethyst can help a person remain calm. However, it's been found that it can make anger worse in people with anger issues.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's also February birthstone, isn't it?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty positive it's the birthstone for February.
Okay.
I think it's like January is garnet, February is amethyst, March is aquamarine.
I know that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So yeah.
I lose it for a few months until like May, which is emerald.
If the idea is that, while it's normally calming, with someone with anger issues, it can make it worse. Let's also talk about the hands. So, right hand is the giving hand, normally. You can, there's an argument for dominance hands as well. Like, if you're right hand dominant, that's why your right hand would be your giving hand. But if you're left hand dominant, you might actually identify your left hand as your giving hand. But regardless, the other hand is your receiving hand. So she is putting this ring on her right hand. I would assume if you're trying to smother someone, it probably is because that's your dominant hand. But, I don't know, do you smother people with your non-dominant hand often?
It would probably, you have to. So, let's talk about smothering. Just really briefly, it takes a lot longer than most people expect. I think even in a baby, it would take longer. Mm-hmm. People fight to live.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder than people expect. That's why, choking victims, a lot of times, the hyoid bone is broken. That's, something that they look for. Mm-hmm. It's a more violent death than... That's why, in a baby, they would have marks on their face and the imprint of a ring and things, because it's harder to do than people think. TV shows make it look like you can just choke somebody out and kill them in, a few seconds.
Yeah.
I don't remember who said it recently, but somebody on one of the podcasts I was listening to, they were talking about somebody who, killed their friend and then told another friend that they had to choke him for, 15 minutes to kill them. Really, really think, pause what you're doing and just sit and do nothing for a full minute. Just clench your fists for one full minute. And then imagine doing that for 15 straight minutes. It's a lot. So, yeah, you'd have to do it with... likely it would be a two-handed thing. But I think, even miming the motion right now, I put my dominant hand, my right hand, down first.
Yeah.
And then I put my left over it, because you just kind of naturally do that.
Yeah.
Motion, most people, I think, wouldn't. It feels weaker.
Yeah, I wouldn't have the strength to do it with my non-dominant hand on the lower level.
Yeah.
I can create a better seal with the dominant hand.
Yeah, so I think it would be more likely. I actually wonder, doing that and the handprint it actually makes me wonder if it was more like a baby that wouldn't stop crying and like you cover the mouth, because because like doing that motion, because a lot of times if you're like choking something or smothering something, you do at the neck.
Yeah.
But if you're covering the face, it's more of a like shut the fuck up. Like it's more of like that.
Yeah.
And since we're seeing Annie with Paul and she's having like the anger issues that she's having, it doesn't seem like these are like, it doesn't seem like she like wants to kill things or kill people. It seems more like she gets it in her head that things need to be punished or that it would be better. I could see it with elderly people if in her head it's, well, you're dying anyways. It would be better to put you out of your misery.
Yep.
And then little babies, they won't shut the fuck up, or maybe their moms, for some reason, she thinks won't be good moms, or maybe their name is Paul. Sorry,
it's fair, and I think that's the thing.
Coming into my brain.
So if we assume then that it reasonably, there's a good chance she is right hand dominant.
Yeah,
she is then wearing it on her giving hand, regardless of which way you believe it works. It's either always the right or the dominant. Good argument for her right being her dominant. She is releasing the negative energy.
Yeah.
Every time she's doing this. I don't believe that it's really specified which hand she is, but it is interesting about, what hand she's using there. But additionally, like, this really made me think, like, an amethyst ring in particular made me think I think it's the cover of Wizard and Glass. I always, for some reason, just remember like a purple cover with like a crystal ball looking thing on top of it. And I have no idea. I've never made it that far. I've never made it that far. But I just viscerally remember this cover when it started talking about her amethyst ring. So
I can tell you that I don't know that the two are related. I don't remember, but I don't know that they're not.
Yeah.
If you remember from Lord of the Rings, like the Palantirs, the orbs, think those.
Okay.
But think gay. And I just mean like colors, like not like, but like it's pink for a reason, and it is pink. It's not like amethyst. It's more like rose quartz.
Okay. Yeah, I think technically like the border was kind of like a wine color, and I think that's why.
No, that's fair. I know exactly what cover. I know what the like soft back.
Yes, exactly. It's like sat on our shelves for so long because I have a copy of it here somewhere in a box.
Yeah.
Because I don't think my mom ever read it, but I just remember this softback cover. And then I think they did like the like reprints of some of them, the post like 2003, and I think it was like white, and there was another like crystal ball looking thing, and I think it had a little bit more of like a blue tone to it, and I think that's why my brain is putting together this like purple.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's fair.
The things you remember.
I'm positive there is a purple.
Yeah.
I'm positive that there is a purple or like a violet one, but the one that is in Wizard and Glass is pink.
Okay.
So.
But anywho, so Annie does end up going free, much to the shock of the community, because the community felt like, no, it's very clear the Dragon Lady did this. But there was a juror who was interviewed, and they stated that while they had grave doubts of her innocence, they also had reasonable doubts of her guilt.
Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is also another thing. Like, think Dragon Ball. That's also probably a great...
Amazing.
Sorry.
Good. The juror does go on saying that they hope that she gets tried again on one of the other counts because they didn't feel like there was enough here.
Yeah.
Which means she goes free, and her, what Paul calls her Book of the Dead, I prefer her scrapbook of murder, but whatever. He sees an article about a body found that
it's not a Necronomicon. Like, it's not... It doesn't sound like one anyways, but maybe if you do read from it, you can summon the old ones. I don't know.
Maybe. So he finds an article about a body that was mutilated of a young man named Andrew Pomeroy. And I may be pronouncing that wrong. Pomeroy.
Maybe his middle name is Paul.
Then the last clipping in the book is an article about missing Paul Sheldon. His age is 42. The answer to life, the universe, and everything. And I really want to believe that Stephen King did that on purpose.
I wouldn't be shocked.
But that's my favorite book, so my headcanon is that it was done on purpose. While he is rolling around the house, because Paul has finished the scrapbook, because he's the last article, basically. And he's just missing right now.
Yeah.
So he's still rolling through the house. He does try and get out. Like, she's got these, like, super locks on the doors. He's not getting anywhere. He also looks outside and he sees that the storm has been so bad. Even if he physically got outside, he would have no way of getting down even driveway. So he grabs some snacks, grabs a knife, and then he goes back to his room. He shoves the knife under his bed. And while he is asleep, Annie has returned. He has not hurt her, because he also took some pain meds to knock his ass out. He wakes up to her setting him up for something. Not really sure what's going on here. He's getting disoriented. And she starts to tell him about Andrew. And she says that she knows that Paul has gotten out of the room and into the rest of the house. And claims that she has been using her hair as things so that she could see when it breaks.
Oh, shit.
Though I will say, it's questionable if she was actually doing this. And I say that because she accuses Paul of going upstairs and that she'd seen hairs broken on things that she had trapped up there too. She may have been doing this. She may not have, because she accuses him of even making it out to the barn, which he has not done.
Yeah.
He can't physically get up the stairs, and he does point that out to her, which makes her just mad. She starts asking him, how many times have you gotten out? And he tells her, honestly, because she already knows, that he has gotten out 3 times. She does not believe him, because, as she puts it, she has seen signs that he has been out more often.
Yeah.
And she does believe he has gotten to places he physically could not have gotten to. So she tells Paul, I know that you saw my book, which, at least this one, for sure, I can believe that maybe there were hairs on that.
Yeah.
Whatever's going on. And so she knows he knows about Andrew, because she had tried to say his name in passing, and Paul just pretended like he didn't know what was happening. According to Annie, Andrew was her lover, though Paul doesn't believe that. He thinks that there's just no way. I don't know. But that is what Annie is saying. And that Andrew had told her that he had been given an assignment from a magazine in New York to sketch ruins of the old hotel, the Overlook, which at this point had burned down 10 years prior to where we are in time for Annie, at the hands of the crazy caretaker. And so she ends up finding out that this isn't true. And Andrew, because Andrew lied to her, he's got to go. Again, this is all her version of the story, though.
Yeah.
There's no telling, if he ever told her that at this point. And I think you can see that by the fact that she is accusing Paul of going places.
Well, and what about it wasn't true? Because...
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You have to now question literally everything. Because she reveals that she'd seen the marks on the door, too. She knew he'd gotten out.
Yeah.
She just didn't let on, but Paul is so busy thinking that Annie is very stupid.
Yeah.
He's ignoring she's a nurse. Stupid people would struggle being a nurse. You have to be smart to be a nurse.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%.
And she got away with murder for a very long time.
Yeah.
So she's not a dumb person, but he is so convinced that she's dumb.
He's convinced that he's the smartest person in any room.
Yes.
And that his readers are fucking morons.
Exactly. She does end up killing Andrew with an axe. And she went to dispose of his remains on Route 9. And here we have the return of the number 9, which, just putting that out there. That is when she actually came across Paul. She was disposing of Andrew's body.
In her laughing place?
Probably. It sounds like she goes there to clear her head and then take care of business. This is when she started asking him, like, how many times have you been out? She does not believe him. She's getting more and more angry. She's also, like, still, like, doing something, and he's not really clear what she is doing. We are to the moment, the only moment that either of us have any context of misery for.
So, well, and just quickly before, so she kills Andrew with an axe.
Yes.
But Andrew specifically, so she's been killing people with fires and pushing them downstairs. Andrew was supposed to have been sketching the Overlook.
Yes.
Which was burned down by Jack.
I'm not sure if we're dealing with Jack having been the person who did that, or if we're still talking about Grady. I haven't read The Shining in a while, and I haven't watched the movie in a bit.
But I'm just saying, which was, you know, she talks about the crazy caretaker.
Yeah.
And then she comes with an axe for Andrew when she finds out that didn't happen.
Yep.
So I want to...
Flag also has a hairy bald axe. Well, spiky bald axe.
Yes, for sure. But I want to put out there, is Annie one of the first women that we're seeing then with a shine? And is this how she's handling it? Because a lot of people that we see with shines don't handle it well. They do substances to handle it, or they go fucking insane. Is it Flag? Or is it that she can't handle the shit that she has going on because she is smarter? Or she has more going on than anybody in the room. Because you can either be very good with a shine or very bad with a shine.
You know, I think that's a great argument. I hadn't thought about that, but no, I think it really is something.
Because she basically could be channeling Jack at that point. She's going, well, you know what? Fuck you. You're not actually dealing with the Overlook. Well, you're going to deal with it now.
Well, and also, like, with The Shining, even regardless of Jack, Grady, the one who he had taken over for, had killed his family with an axe.
Yeah.
That's what he did. He took an axe to his girls, the twins, the creepy twins in the hallway. So even if we were dealing with Grady, the axe keeps coming back.
Yeah. Well, and what books had been out by now that somebody had killed people they didn't like with fire.
Yeah.
You know, somebody had killed other, like, she's basically going through and dealing with shit in ways that other people have already done, because Carrie was certainly already out by this point.
Yes.
And she's basically doing, like, what Carrie had done. I don't think Carrie, like, started fires with her brain, but Carrie did shit with her brain. And if Annie basically could do the same things, and she's, you know, first she channels Carrie and she's starting fires to get rid of people who bothered her, who hurt her or something. And then, you know, she's pushing people downstairs. And I'm trying to think, like, we don't know enough yet, but I think we'll get there where that's probably not something that is unique to Annie Wilkes either.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that's going to end up not being unique to her.
Yeah.
Because now, then we come to an axe, which again is not unique to Annie in this universe. And it's like, why?
No, it's fair.
I think she's pulling in this stuff from elsewhere.
No, I think that's a good point. I know when I read that, I initially thought, did something get out of the Overlook? And it got into, like, Andrew, like, whether or not he was supposed to be sketching it. Oh, obviously, she knows about the Overlook. Even if she just went too close to the Overlook, did something get out?
That had been my initial thought, too. But if he was lying about it, and he had never been there, it doesn't, like, that doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah.
But if she can essentially, like, pull in, and she does know what's going on there.
And I think that's the thing, is that at this I feel like is the point in the story where they're telling you can't trust what anybody is saying, because we now know either Annie is lying to us about the hairs because she believes Paul 100% got to the barn and upstairs, or Paul is lying to us about his capabilities to get to the barn and upstairs.
Yeah.
Which means that we can't trust what's being said to us about Andrew.
Or I think there's another possibility, which is that Annie is forgetting that she's going places after she's putting her hairs places.
Yeah.
She's basically blacking out and not realizing that she's going to the barn and she's going upstairs and she's doing things.
Yeah.
Because where is she? What is she doing? Because he doesn't know, right? And the book doesn't tell you where she is when she disappears.
Nope. She just goes out of the room, and he can kind of hear her in some of the rooms. Like, he can hear her, like, upstairs. He can hear when she gets up in the morning because he can hear her walking.
Yeah.
But otherwise, he doesn't necessarily know what she's doing except for based on sound.
If the way, like, if she basically is threading her hair and blacking out, she would have no idea, because who else is going to her barn? Who else is doing these things? But if she's forgetting when she's done those things because she's deep in these depressive, like, obviously she has deep mental health issues and she's the one who's forgetting. I think at that point it's not that you can't trust her, because to her, there's only two people there.
Yeah.
Who else could it be? It's not that you can't trust him because he can't get to those places and he knows he hasn't been there. She can't trust herself and doesn't realize she's going. And I think at this point, from everything that we've seen, I think that's fairly likely.
Yes.
Myself.
Oh, I think so too.
Yeah, that she just has no idea what she's been up to.
Yeah.
Because I think that's probably why she forgets to feed him and forgets to medicate him.
Yeah.
And shit. I think sometimes it's probably a punishment, but I think sometimes she doesn't realize she hasn't given him food in however long.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we are now to the moment. Only, like, I always thought she was, like, just breaking Paul's, like, foot in the movie. And maybe she is. Maybe the movie is different. In the book, she chops it off. She chops off his foot with the axe that she used to kill Andrew. One of the last things that Paul sees is that amethyst ring on her right pinky finger. As she just chops off the foot, and then she cauterizes it. Because, this is going to be the best way to keep him from dying. And she hobbles his ass.
it also means that there's no way to, like, fix it. I'm almost positive.
Yeah, like, it's
just done.
It's done. It is all done. That is how this section ends. And, whew.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, this part was pretty interesting, particularly the chapter that goes through, like, her history, like, of murders, because it's very thorough. It's got, like, dates, headlines to the articles. I'm just trying to sum it all up, because honestly, I could probably talk for an hour just about that chapter.
Yeah.
It was the more interesting section so far, the first part.
I know the subreddit is making, or has been making, a list of the top 10 Stephen King books, and this has made that list.
Yeah, I think they put it at, like, number 6. I don't know that I'd agree with it, but
11/22/63 is on that list too, and I can't really wait to get to it.
Yeah.
I think because of that detail, like the newspaper articles and just how much detail ends up in there, I feel like that's going to end up being really good as well.
Yeah.
So the last 2 weeks we drew Temperance when we drew our tarot card. The cards basically are trying to say to maintain balance while keeping active, but also staying grounded. So I'm going to hope that we don't pull it again, because at that point it feels like we've just been failing over and over again. But I guess we will see. We shall see.
Maybe Temperance is just the theme of misery.
2 came out of the deck, which means apparently we're getting 2 cards this week.
Well, then we know at least we're getting one that isn't Temperance.
Yeah, no, neither are Temperance this week.
All right. First, the Queen of Swords. The Queen represents making impartial judgments, using intellect more than emotion. She is emotionally understanding, but fair with reason.
So, like...
fair and realistic?
Yeah. I was gonna say Temperance downgraded.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing okay, but...
The second card that we have pulled is the 9 of Pentacles. The 9, which, it's a number 9.
Oh, jeez.
The 9 is a sign of independence and wealth, perhaps luxury. It encourages enjoying the fruits of one's labor.
Have a good time, but be fair and realistic. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, cool. Just a reiteration from last episode as well. If you or anyone you know is struggling with their mental health or substance abuse, the National Alliance on Mental Illness has resources and can direct you to further resources that can help. You can call 1-800-950-6264, email helpline@nami.org, or text helpline to 62640. And you can also actually go onto their website and chat with someone on there at nami.org/help.
I don't have it in me this week. Not after the foot chopping. I can't go and find other worlds after the foot chopping. Rocket says to go and find other worlds than these ones.
Follow us on Instagram at ManyConstantWorlds. You can also DM us if you have any thoughts, questions, things you'd like to put out there. You can email us at manyconstantworlds@gmail.com.